Some photos are meant to last forever, and some feel like they already knew they would. We take selfies to capture a fleeting feeling we're afraid might slip away, but sometimes those photos end up saying more than we ever meant them to. In this episode, we're looking at 3 haunting stories, each tied together by a final photo. Not because the image is disturbing, but because of what came after. The Webster sisters out for a casual walk. Sailor Gilliam stranded on a cliff with nowhere left to go. And singer Jenny Rivera smiling before stepping on a flight that never landed. None of them knew what was coming, but the camera caught something that time couldn't erase. Let's begin. The Webster sisters. Kelsey Webster was 15, bright, kind, and full of confidence. Her younger sister Savannah followed close behind, quieter maybe, but just as curious. The two had just moved to a new town in Utah, trying to find their rhythm in unfamiliar surroundings. It wasn't easy being the new kids, but they were adjusting, and they had each other. Not long after settling in, they made a new friend, Essa Ricker, who was also 15. The 3 girls quickly became inseparable and developed the kind of friendship that feels like it was always meant to be. And on an October afternoon in 2011, they headed out for a walk through Spanish Fork Canyon. Just 3 girls chasing golden hour lightning with teenage innocence and phone cameras. They laughed, posed, and waved at the eastbound train that rumbled into view. But while they were focused on that, something else was coming. Something they didn't see. Something no one could have predicted. From a distance, trains don't sound as loud as you'd think, especially not in a canyon where sound can play tricks and echoes blur direction. Kelsey, Savannah, and Essa were waving at the train they could see, the eastbound one. It was loud, it was coming in clear view, and it gave them a false sense of safety. What they didn't know was that another train, a westbound Union Pacific, was coming from behind and completely hidden from view until it was already too late. The conductors did everything they could, but a train isn't like a car. It can take over a mile to fully halt, even in emergency mode. And these girls, they had seconds, maybe less. The scene that followed was devastating. Kelsey and Essa were killed instantly. Savannah, on the other hand, was rushed to the hospital. For a moment, hope of her survival lingered, but her injuries were just too severe and she passed away not long after. The community was shattered. 3 bright lives were gone just like that. And the selfies they took just before the impact reminds us of how quickly joy can turn to tragedy. While much of the public's attention was rightfully drawn to the tragic loss of the girls, little has been said about the 2 engineers aboard the oncoming train. John Anderson, the engineer, and his assistant Michael Anderson weren't strangers to the rails. They knew every sound and every mile, but nothing could have prepared them for that day. They blared the horn. They tried to slow down. They did everything in their power to get the girls' attention, but the outcome was already written. Both men were left shattered. John and Michael carried a guilt that wasn't theirs to bear, and yet it consumed them. Michael Anderson later reflected on the incident, stating, "What happened was very intense, and I have to carry it the rest of my life." The trauma ran so deep, they needed time off work to cope. No charges were filed. No one blamed them, but blame isn't the only thing that leaves scars. Sometimes doing everything right still breaks you. Now we turn the page to another tragedy, one that didn't come with the roar of a train, but with silence. Silence of wilderness and isolation. 2 young hikers, Sailor Gilliams and Brendan Vega, both 22 and both from Ventura, California, were out in the Cold Spring Trail area. They were taking in the sights and getting some fresh air. It was a regular hiking day. But as daylight started fading, something shifted. It wasn't so much about the scenic beauty anymore, but about surviving the elements. That's when things went sideways. With no flashlights and not enough daylight, they found themselves disoriented, trying to find their way back. And that's when the situation became intense. Gilliams took a fall and fractured her leg. Vega naturally tried to help her, because that's what you do when someone you care about is hurt. But then, tragedy struck again. In an attempt to assist her, Vega himself fell and sustained injuries. At that point, their odds of getting out of there started to look pretty grim. Now, what do you do when you're in the middle of nowhere with no supplies and you're both injured? This is the part where most of us would just freeze or panic. But Vega made a choice. He left Gilliams behind, hoping to find help because he knew that she was in no condition to move. But as we know, hope doesn't always play out the way we want. Vega's decision to leave Gilliam's in search of help ultimately led him to a tragic end. While navigating a rocky ledge, he fell, and that was the last anyone would hear from him. His body was later found, and the harsh reality of the situation set in. Sometimes, no matter how hard you try, nature doesn't always give second chances. Meanwhile, Gilliam's was left alone, increasingly aware that survival was becoming more of a miracle. There was no way for her to contact the outside world. It was just her and the elements, battling it out. Hours stretched into what must have felt like days. Then, by some sheer twist of fate, a group of hikers came across her. The one thing that stood out about her, her red hair, was visible against the natural backdrop, and that's when the rescue team got their first break. They contacted emergency services, and soon enough, Gilliam's was airlifted to safety and rushed to Cottage Hospital for treatment. Gilliam's, after all of that, made it out alive. But this tragic incident highlights something we often overlook when we're out enjoying the wilderness. Preparation is literally life or death. For those of us who love to hike or venture into nature, it's a wake-up call to take safety seriously. We hear it all the time, but the reality is, a hike that starts with excitement can end with life-changing consequences if we're not careful. A selfie is just a way to share and document our lives. But what happens when the snap is taken, not just to mark a fun moment, but as the last thing someone ever does? What if that selfie, frozen in time, turns out to be the final glimpse we get of someone before they're gone? The story of Jenny Rivera, the beloved Mexican-American singer who took her last selfie just moments before an unimaginable tragedy, is remembered even today. Jenny Rivera's powerful voice, no-holds-barred personality, and ability to connect with her fans made her a legend. On December 9, 2012, Rivera was on a private plane flying from Monterrey, Mexico to Toluca after performing a concert in the city. She'd just taken to social media, sharing a picture of herself in a plane seat, smiling. It was just another selfie in a long line of updates, but this one turned out to be different. This was the last photo she ever shared. As the jet climbed into the dark night sky, everything seemed normal, but shortly after takeoff, things started to go wrong. Around 3 a.m., air traffic controllers lost contact with the plane, and the flight lost radar visibility. Reports later indicated that the jet had suffered from a significant malfunction with its stabilizer, vital for keeping the plane balanced and in control. The pilots tried to manage the situation. They even made an attempt to return to the airport, but it was too late. Moments before crashing, witnesses reported hearing the roar of the plane's engine struggling against the sky. The jet plummeted and crashed into a rugged mountainous area near Iturbide, a small town in Nuevo León, Mexico. The crash was catastrophic. The plane shattered upon impact and left no survivors. There were 7 people on board, including Jenny, and all perished in that horrifying moment. Rescue teams reached the crash site in the early hours of the morning, but by then there was nothing left to save. The wreckage was scattered across the jagged terrain, and the disaster became painfully evident. Eventually, in 2021, almost 9 years after the crash, Jenny Rivera's family reached a settlement with the owners of the Learjet. The amount wasn't made public in detail, but reports suggest it reached millions. Still, no sum could ever balance what was lost. A mother, a daughter, an icon was gone in seconds. These stories are about the unpredictable nature of life. One moment you're laughing with friends or your partner, and the next, everything changes. So maybe the takeaway isn't fear, it's presence. It's being fully here with the people who matter in the moments that count, because none of us knows which selfie will be our last. So take the photo, say the thing, call them back and hug them tighter, because life, as we've seen, doesn't always give us a second frame. If this video moved you a little, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. It helps more people discover the untold stories.